We're up to chapter 6, verse 14. In the blue book is on page 31. It's still the beginning of the Parsha of Noach. Okay, we have to. So, let's just read from verse 13 till we get the context. The first two verses, first three verses, identified Noach, who he is, righteous, perfect in some sense, walked with God. And 13, God said to Noach, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with robbery through them. Behold, I am about to destroy them from the earth. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make the ark with compartments, cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you should make it. 300 cubits, the length of the ark." How big is a cubit?
A meter, roughly.
Like a foot and a half, that's something like 20 inches. Right? So they say it's a foot and a half. I think it's in between a foot and a half and 2 feet, depending upon. So there's a foot and a half. You're talking about 450 feet long. That's a pretty big boat. Right? 450 feet long. It's longer than a football field.
Wow. Enough for all the animals in the world, I think. Even if only two for each.
Okay. Let me just comment. You say not for all the animals in the world. You mean, let's say 2 of each?
Animal.
2 of each?
2 of each, yeah.
2 of each what?
Animal. Species.
2 of each animal is 2 animals. 2 of each what?
Kind of animal.
Kind of animals, right? 2 of each kind. And what counts as a kind? I'm waiting to hear the wrong word, but you have to say.
Breed.
The word that you should be saying is species. Right. But that's wrong, because the modern biological concept of species, I shouldn't say concepts, there are at least 10 different definitions of species, thank you very much, which are used opportunistically at whenever the occasion requires. That word has no reference in ancient Hebrew language at all. The word min, which sometimes is mistranslated as species, Rashi points out the word min can embrace creatures which are unlike in appearance and unlike in behavior. And they can still be part of the same min. So the best word to say is categories, conscious of the fact that you don't know what defines a category. Maybe all 2-legged animals are in the same category. Wouldn't that reduce the overall number of animals that you need? If you don't know what the categories are, you don't know how many there are. Now, having said that, the Ramban says exactly what you said, but he knows, saying it from knowledge, not by guesswork. He says that the ark was clearly much too small to contain all the animals that were designated for it, and that was part of the miracle. The whole thing is miraculous, after all. We're not talking about a natural story. And part of the miracle was that they were all able to be housed inside the ark. I'm going to say something more fundamental on the basis of Rashi. Anyways, let's register the size of this boat. It's 450 feet long, 50 cubits its width. Okay, so it's like 75 feet wide, 30 cubits its height, 45 feet high, 4 stories high. 10 feet is a normal story in a building. This is gigantic. They had to make it by hand, out of wood. Well, he has 120 years, so he's got time. Right? But it's a gigantic project. A window, etc. Okay, now, let's take a look at Rashi on 14. This is how you should make the ark. There are numerous ways by which God could have saved Noach. Why does he need a box? Does God need a box to save them? No. What kind of thing is that? I mean, the God who's bringing the flood could also save them from the flood without a box. So the question is, why was he told to make it? Why then did he burden him with the construction of the ark? Now listen to this answer and try to figure out the dynamics in the answer. He told him to construct the ark so that the men of the generation of the flood might see him employed on it for 120 years, and might ask him, why do you need this for? And so that he might answer them, the Holy One, blessed be, is about to bring a flood upon the world. Perhaps they might repent. Gemara and Sanhedrin, and Rashi is quoting it here. What does this tell you about Noach? What does this tell you about his character? Let's recite it again. Why did God tell him make a box? Why? What for? Tell you what for. Because he's going to engage in this enormous, gigantic project, and it's going to attract attention. And people are going to ask him, Noach, what did he need this box for? This gigantic box. And he'll answer them. God is going to bring a flood because of the wickedness of this society, this culture, this population. And thereby, maybe they'll repent and change and there won't be a flood. What does this tell you about Noach?
That he was someone somewhat important at the time.
Yeah. What does it tell you about his character? Yeah.
He needed a visual aid. Maybe he had problems communicating. He needed people to see it.
Again, right, this is exactly it. He said, because Baruch told him to make the box so that people will ask him, so that he will answer them, so that they will know. Why wouldn't it just be if God tells him, he'll run around telling people right away? Why wait? Why need a trigger that they should come and ask him? Why? Because without that, he'll just keep mum. He'll just keep quiet. Won't say a word. God, it's your world, going to destroy it, it's your business, fine, I'm watching television and drinking beer. Leave me alone. Oh, I forgot, I got to build the box. Okay, I'll build the box. But to talk to people, to explain it to them, maybe they'll, not a word. This tells you something deep about his character. The Midrashim contrast him with Abraham, who, when God says he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, horribly wicked societies, Abraham's up in arms and he has a whole argument against it and protests against it. 5 little cities, wicked cities. Here's the whole world. And Noach would be quite comfortable and happy and content just to let it happen. Now I told you we were going to notice in this description of Noach weaknesses, because we had 2 ways of explaining in his generations, one positive and one negative, and I asked, what motivation could anybody have for describing it negatively? Well, here's a motivation, right here. Okay? And then we can add in what I said in the name of the Ramban, that it was definitely too small. The whole thing is like show and tell. The box isn't necessary. God chose to do it that way, so it's to create a social impact. And the whole thing is miraculous anyhow. So, and by the way, for those who get into this kind of thing, what the Ramban teaches you is, when you have a story of a miracle, the storyline that's written in the book need not include all the details of the miracle. Don't tell me, but it wasn't written down, so it can't be right. The book is very terse. The book leaves out all sorts of things that you're supposed to figure out on your own. The Ramban says, here's something which was an additional miraculous feature. So people say, well, how did the kangaroos get to Australia afterwards? Boy, that's really tough, They didn't swim in the ocean, right? But the whole thing is a story of a miracle, excuse me. It's not supposed to be explained in naturalistic terms. It's a non-starter to ask questions like that.
The physical aspect, the natural aspect of it is just meant to act as a story, not literal story, but a story of how of his nature and how people were, and how to get them to follow along.
I'm not sure what dimension we're on now. I am taking this story as literally true.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's figurative. I'm not saying it's a parable. I'm saying it's literally true. But now I have to understand whether the words in the book tell the whole story, or whether there's more to the story than that. When someone asks, how did the kangaroos get to Australia? What is he asking? Well, there's sea in between our part of the world and Australia, and they couldn't swim, so there's a problem. Why is there a problem? Because he wants a natural explanation. And he doesn't know where it will come from. What I'm saying is, he's barking up the wrong tree. He's raising a question which is irrelevant in the context. Where did God get so much water to flood the world with? What could he do to make, where did he get it from? What kind of dams did he build? You're talking about God, excuse me. He doesn't need dams, he doesn't need to get it from someplace. We're talking about the creator of the universe, right? All the questions of that type are absolutely ridiculous. But you can learn something. You know the dimensions of the ark, and you know the number of creatures that are necessary to occupy it, and you can figure out that it's too small, then you can figure out that there's another miracle that's involved. The same with getting things to Australia and all the rest of it. All of it can be additional information that you can figure out on your own. This text requires you to do some figuring out. It's not totally explicit. Yeah.
Is there a reference or a relationship between the 120 years of the task that took Noah to build the ark and this constant Jewish idea that there is 120 years for tikkun or for...
It's a very funny thing because the verse in the Torah which mentions 120 years says that is for mankind until the grace period up to the flood will be operating, and then if there's no return from on their part, the flood will come. It doesn't say anything about an individual person's lifetime being 120 years. So how that got to be, you should live to 120 and so on, I really don't know. Now, Moses lived to 120. So that could be a place where we come from. But from here, it's certainly not. Okay, that's that Rashi. Now, okay, so let me show you something now. Take a look at the next page, 33. Verse 18, to the top of the page. Listen to this verse. Listen to this and see if you pick up in this verse something that's absolutely astonishing. Astonishing. No one today could write this in any context whatsoever. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. Period. What's astonishing about those words?
That Hashem will establish his covenant with.
Nope.
It says your sons, and then it goes to your sons' wives, but in between.
You skipped. Look again.
It says your wives in between.
In between what and what?
Between your sons and your son's wife, it says your wife, which is weird. You're in the subject of your son. Wouldn't you have your son and then your son's wife?
Oh, man. Read it again. You got the right idea, but you're not paying attention to the words. Read it again. What comes after the dash?
You, your sons, instead of your wife.
Yeah. After you should come your wife. It says you, your sons, all the men on one side, and now, oh yeah, your wife and their sons' wives. What's going on? You would never write that. I don't care how chauvinistic you are. You would never write that. You would write you and your wife and your sons' wives. Of course. Right? Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Fine. Now look at verse 7 at the bottom of the page. What do? Noah with his sons, his wife and his sons' wives with him, went into the ark. So they did what they were told, exactly, in detail, right? Okay. Now, of course, the answer to this is very simple. Men in the front, women in the back, when we get the seats without windows. We're second-class citizens, right? Fine, okay, good. All the chauvinistic politics can be gleefully expressed. Take a look on page 39. It's over. The waters have receded. The ark is on Mount Ararat. Verse 15, middle of the page. God spoke to Noah saying, "Go forth from the ark, you and your wife. Your sons and your sons' wives with you. Aha. I know. The scribe was sitting by the fire, and he was dozing off, and he forgot to put the men first and the women second. He just got mixed up, right? Uh-huh. Right, uh-huh. And so now look at verse 18. Skip down a couple of lines. So Noah went forth, and his sons, and his wife and his sons' wives. Now it gets complicated, eh? It's really getting complicated. Like, we have 4 sources, 2 with Noah's sons, and then women. The 3rd, Noah and his wife, son's wife, and then the 4th, back to the original. What's Titzach? What's going on? Now I'll take a look at the Rashi that I have on the sheet here. This is 6:18. You, your sons, your wife, males separately and females separately. From this one may infer that they were not permitted to live together in the ark as man and wife. The whole world is being destroyed. There's not a time to carry on with normal behavior, especially normal creative behavior. And in fact, this is a law which is codified in the Talmud also. If there's a time of famine, when the world is under an influence of destruction, they don't carry on in the normal manner. So, on page 33, in verse 18, at the top of the page, it says men and women separate. At the bottom of the page, when they went in, it said men and women separate. Okay, now go back to 39. Let's see what's going on over there. Back to 39. 16 again. God speaking to Noah. Go forth from the ark, you and your wife, your sons and your sons' wives with you. Every living being that is with you, of all flesh, of birds, animals, and all creeping things that move on the earth, order them out with you, and let them teem on the earth, and be fruitful, and multiply on the earth. Aha! So that's what's going on here. It says Noah and his wife, and his sons' wives, because now it's time to get together and repopulate the earth. That being the case, 18 is a shock, because 18 says they didn't do it. They came out, Noah and his sons, his wife and the sons' wives, men and women separate. And they were at least indicated not to do that. And they didn't obey. That's an underlying dynamic here. If you don't pay any attention to the order, or like so many people, you think, the Torah is sloppy, the Talmud is sloppy, they don't care about things that are contradictory, and we don't take it too seriously. We look for the big themes, we do literary analysis. Every word was carefully planned and designated by the author, capital A. So this has to be taken into account. I'll show you. It underlies the whole next set of events. But Rashi says explicitly that they should be separate. And then, if you look at the very bottom of this page, this verse, you and your wife, husband and wife are mentioned together. Now he allowed them to resume family life. When you see it in context, it's very natural. It's very natural. Are we together? Mm-hmm. I think this is inescapable.
Could it be the reason they left the ark not together because they were coming from a place where they were forbidden to be together, and then once they were outside the ark, they could be together once again? Is it phrased that way?
I mean, all of this is under God's instruction, right? God told them to go in separate, and they went in separate. Now God told them to go out together. That's what He told them to do. They say, yeah, but not till we get to the Casbah. Not till we get to the drinks in the bar. He told them to go out together. What's stopping you from going out hand in hand? I mean, what's holding you back?
Why didn't they?
Okay, that's a fair question. We'll see that in Rashi coming up. That's the key question. and what it has to do with the rest of the. But if you don't notice, you haven't got the background for the developments. Okay, so now, now let's go back to 33. Go back to 33, bottom of the page, verse 7. I want to show you something else in verse 7. Verse 7 says that they went into the ark. Look carefully what it says and see if you can figure out something that needs to be addressed. Noach, with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives with him, went into the ark because of the waters of the flood.
They went in the ark not because God told them to go in the ark, it's the flood.
Yeah, isn't that a little odd? I mean, God said, go in. So, and they said, they went in all right. The water's up to my neck. What am I going to do? I'm going to drown. Okay, onto the ark. It's a very funny picture. It's funny even if you looked only at this page. But if you had any sense of the style of the Tanakh all the way through, when God gives an order to someone and he carries it out, the verse says God says do X, and the verse will say, and he did X, as God told him. Or it'll say, and he obeyed God. That's how it's expressed that he does what he was told. Here, it says he did it, but for a different reason entirely. So, Rashi comments. This is 7, right? This is, what chapter is this? This is 7, right? So we have this here. Can't find the numbers now. Oh, yeah. Right. Because of the waters of the flood, third from the bottom on this side of the page. Noach also was of those people who were wanting in faith. He was lacking faith. He believed and he did not believe. Yeah, God said so, and okay, but maybe, who knows, and, we'll see what happens, that the flood would come. And he would not enter the ark until the waters forced him to do so. So again, we were looking for weaknesses in Noah to justify the negative reading of in his generations. Here's another weakness. Yeah, he believed and didn't believe. He was like, ambivalent. Okay, now, 7:13. So now, when finally they actually go in, this is on page 35. On that very day, Noach came, Shem, Cham, and Yafes, his 3 children, Noach's sons, Noah's wife, and the 3 wives, into the ark. Now, on that very day, in the Hebrew, is Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh. Be'etzem Hayom means in the high point, most brilliant part of the day. It's not this day as opposed to other days. In the English, that very day would mean, Wednesday, not Friday. But the Hebrew implies out in the open, with the blazing sun, noontime, when everything's open and visible. And there are several times where it says this in the Torah itself. And in each case, the oral tradition records that there was a reason why God wanted it to be in the open, absolutely open and visible to everyone. And Rashi explains this one here. In the self-same day, Scripture teaches you that the people of his generation said, if we see him enter the ark, we will smash it and kill him. We're not going to allow this. We don't believe you. We think you're phony, and we think you're a liar, and we think you're exaggerating. People come to Hyde Park in London. Doomsday is coming, and so forth and so on. That's what we think you are. But if you're right, you're not going to escape. You're going down with us. That's what they said. So the Holy One, blessed be he, thereupon said, I will let him enter before the eyes of everyone. I'm not going to tell him to do it at midnight when no one's looking. No, right in the middle of the day, when everybody can see. Everyone shall, the eyes of everyone, and we shall see whose word prevails. Let's see them stop you. I'm not hiding. We left Egypt at morning time when it was the middle of the month, so you have the sun on one side, the moon on the other side, the sun rising, the moon setting, right? Some said that the sun is a god. Some said the moon is a god. If you do it when only one is in the sky, the other ones will say, see, he took him out when this one wasn't in the sky, because he's afraid of that one. That's why he had to engineer it that way. He said, no, let's do it when they're both in the sky, when you can see both of them. So, in other words, the impact on other people is something that is taken into account throughout the Tanakh. When people talk about the Jewish God, there's a terrible tendency to think the Jews are a people, and they have their religion, and they have their God. They're 0.0001% of the world's population, and then there's everybody else. They have their gods, and they have their religions, they have their cultures, and they have their values, and so forth and so on. What they forget is that the Jewish religion is to worship the creator of the universe. That includes the creator of the Chinese, and the creator of the Nigerians, and the creator of people in Alaska, and the stars and the galaxies, everything. Not the Jewish God as if it's local and parochial. So there's care for what impact will be made on other people as well. And here it's to frustrate their proclaimed design of stopping it from happening. And over there it's to frustrate their misinterpretation of the events as a respect for their gods. This kind of consideration occurs over and over again in this text. Are we together so far? Okay, now we're up to the next page.
This is 9:7 is the first one?
This starts with 9:7.
He goes back to the sons being together at the end after they leave the ark. Did we answer that?
No, I didn't answer it yet, no. We didn't answer it yet. Now this is chapter 9. Oh, this is, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. Right, okay. So let's,
It's the same one, it's the same.
Oh, yeah?
okay, so, yeah, you have the new one now?
Yeah.
All right, so now let's go back to page 39. And let's follow the events, and we'll pick up the Rashi as we go along. So as we saw, God told them to go out together, and they go out separately. 19, or 18, so Noah went forth, his sons, wife, and his sons' wives with him. Everything being, every creeping thing, every bird, everything that creeps on the earth came out of the ark by their families. Except for Noah and his sons. They didn't go out by their families. Okay, now then Noah builds an altar, and he offers sacrifices, and God appreciates the sacrifices, and he says there will never be another general destruction of the world. Fine. Now chapter 9. Number 1. God blessed Noah and his sons, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the land. Aha. So when he told them, go out together, and in the context it was clear the intention was that they should get together and reproduce, and they didn't do it. So now it's followed up by a statement of a blessing. Be fruitful and multiply. Then comes a lot of intervening material, and verse 7 at the bottom of the page, and you be fruitful and multiply. Teem on the earth and multiply on it. Wow. Twice. Saying it twice. But of course, at the beginning it says he blessed them. And say be fruitful and multiply. At the end he just says be fruitful and multiply, which sounds like an order. Now look at Rashi. Very top of the page. According to the real sense, that means the pshat. The first time in Genesis, when God said to man, be fruitful and multiply, there too it says he blessed them and said. So there it was said as a blessing, an assurance that they will be fruitful. In other words, you will be fruitful, and you will multiply, and you will fill the land, and so forth and so on. Here too, in chapter 9, verse 1, which Rashi is not commenting on, the verse says explicitly, he blessed them. But chapter 9, verse 7 doesn't say bless them. Just says be fruitful and multiply. So Rashi says, here's a command. Okay. Now, if you're attending and you think through how literature works, the question that you should ask yourself is, what do they do this time? When they were told to leave the ark, it was clearly indicated to them, no, it wasn't an explicit blessing, no, it wasn't an explicit order, but it was indicated to them that they should get together and reproduce. And they didn't do it. Now they get a blessing and an order. Do they do it or don't they do it? Well, let's see what the text says. This is verse 8, at the bottom of 41. It says, and God said. Now I have to teach you something which is crucial throughout this text. Verse 1 starts a speech by God. God speaks all the way through verse 7. Verse 8 starts, and God said. Why does it repeat, and God said? All God speaking the whole time. Leave that out, just keep going. Because it wasn't one speech. It was not one speech. If it repeats, and this has nothing to do with God, this, every time. If it says, Reuven said, there's a whole long thing of words, and Reuven said, when it repeats that, it means there was a gap in between. So here there was a gap. God gave them a blessing, and God told them to be fruitful and multiply, and then sometime later there was a second speech by God. I wonder what happened in between. And I wonder how what happened in between generated the new speech. That's the kind of question that you have to have in mind. Now let's look at the new speech and see if we can figure it out. And we'll see what Rashi says. God said to Noah and his sons with him, saying, and as for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your offspring after you, with every living being that is with you, with the birds, the animals, every beast of the land with you, of all that departed from the ark to every beast of the land, and I will confirm my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood, it's not right in words, but okay, to destroy the earth. No more general destructions. Okay, that's nice. Nice to know, comforting, But what's it got to do with the storyline? How did it come in? Have we just left the thing behind and gone on to some other kind of thing? So look at Rashi. Nine. Behold, I am in agreement with you. He said this because Noah feared to fulfill the duty of propagating the species until the Holy One, blessed be He, promised him that he would not again destroy the world. And this promise God made. Ultimately, he said to him, God said to Noah, if you are still anxious, I'm willing to give my promise, the permanence and strength of covenant, that I will give you a sign. So, the connection of the scenario is, Noah is reluctant to repopulate the world because he says, those people who were directly created by God gave forth a population that deteriorated to the extent that they all had to be destroyed. Why repeat the experiment? We know the ending. We know the outcome. Now you're starting with even inferior materials. I couldn't compare it to Adam and Chava, who were directly created by God. It's hopeless. It's hopeless. That's why he's reluctant. That's why he doesn't want to do it. So God says, I know that. I know what your worry is, what your fear is. I'm speaking to it. I promise you that it won't happen. Okay? Now, having gotten used to this turn of thought, the thing we have to ask ourselves is, so what does he do now? What does he do? Does he now change his mind and go ahead and do it? And notice that verse 12 starts, and God said. And I just told you that if it repeats, and God said, it means there was a gap. A gap. God said, you're worried about the future destruction. I'll put myself on record there won't be future destruction. Let's see what will happen now. And there's a gap. And guess what? He doesn't do it. I know he doesn't do it because he does it finally at the bottom of the page. We didn't get there yet. I peeked ahead. Right? Okay, let's see what happens now. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I give between me and you and every living being that is with you to generations forever. I've set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And it shall happen when I place a cloud above the earth, and the bow will be seen in the cloud. I'll remember my covenant between me and you and every living being of all flesh. The water shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living being among all flesh that is on the earth. Okay, it's the same thing 6 times. I know that, okay? If we went through it carefully, we would see that every time there's something else to say. I'm not interested in that. I want to just point out, the next thing is a continuation of the same story. I made a covenant. That's not enough. I'm going to create a sign, a visible sign, that will symbolize this covenant. And when the clouds will gather, and you'll be worried, I remember that. Clouds gathering, 16 years ago, that was the flood. Don't worry, you'll see the bow, and you'll know the bow is there, and you'll realize that I've promised not to destroy the world. Okay? It's giving a visual sign that it should be, that should confirm it. We spoke about this a few times ago, this idea. Okay, do they do it or don't they do it? No, they don't do it. Okay, so verse 17 starts, and God said to Noah, a fourth separate speech. There's time between the third and the fourth. Let's see, I promised them a sign. Will that do it? No. Okay. God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have confirmed between me and all flesh on the earth. Now look at the Rashi that we have here. Pick up the wrong page all the time. 9:17. This is the sign of the covenant. He pointed to the rainbow and said to him, this is the sign of which I had spoken. He showed him one. God showed him visually a rainbow. And that does it. That does it. Seeing it does it. Does that recall to you something we said last week?
Yeah, the boat.
How about the burning bush, where Moses had to see 2 out of the 3 signs? How about God showing Abraham the stars when he tells him that that's what your progeny is going to be like? And we said the distance between the head and the heart, so that you can believe something, but it doesn't affect your emotions, and therefore it doesn't affect your actions. Here's another example of the same thing. He saw the rainbow. What's the result of seeing the rainbow? Look at verse 18. The sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Yafes, Ham, the father of Canaan. These 3 were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole world was spread out. That's when it finally happens. Now let me pick up a couple of details here. Rashi tells us that in 17, when it says this is the sign of the covenant, he showed him one. But golly, in verse 12, it also says this is the sign of the covenant. So how does Rashi know that it didn't happen in verse 12? It's the same words.
They confirmed?
Sorry?
In verse 17 it says confirmed, that I confirmed between me, and verse 12 doesn't say confirmed. Would that be a reason?
Well, I don't think so, because it's not the sign that's confirmed, it's the covenant that's confirmed. I don't see how confirm is going to do that. But let me just explain a little piece of grammar to you. THIS is a demonstrative. When you write this something, it's got to be something you can point to, something that's in front of you. They're so interested in English, the difference between this and that. That book could be the one you talked about. It could be, in America. But this book, it's got to be here on the table. It can't be someplace else. Okay, but now, let's suppose I send you an email and I say, here's what you requested. This is the recipe for muffins. What am I referring to by the word this? The rest of the letter, right? I'm referring to the text in the rest of the letter. That's a perfectly natural use of the word this. In 12, God says, this is the covenant. Oh yeah? Which? What? Oh, I'm telling you. Be patient. It's a rainbow. It's going to be the cloud. It'll be there when the clouds come, so on and so on. That's what it is. I'm telling you. The word this in 12 refers to the ensuing text. But once you've had this referring to the ensuing text, and you have a description of what it is and how it will operate, to say this again, there's nothing left to say this on. Especially since in 8 and 17, you've only got that sentence. That's all there is. That's why the this in 17 means he sees it. And the whole dynamic of the story is what to do about the fact that they're not willing to get together and procreate. The whole story is about that. That's why it's 19 is the climax that they finally do procreate. And as I've told you, the breaks on the English side mean nothing. If you look on the Hebrew side, you see it's all one block of text. No breaks. Okay? All right. Let's see what's next. Okay, now going to chapter 11.
Did you answer it again? Did you answer the question why at the end, when they left the ark, they were meant for...
Yeah, because they were afraid that there was going to be another flood, and they couldn't bring themselves to start it all over again and end up with a gigantic destruction. They couldn't invest in that project. Okay, this is what I found here. 11:5. Here we go. Okay. This is the story of the Tower of Babel. Again, this a gigantic amount of material. I'm just doing Rashi. Just want you to understand Rashi as best I can teach it. Okay, so there was one language and one common purpose, and they settled in a valley, and they wanted to make sure that they would have a central point, and they would be always living in relationship to that central point. They wouldn't be scattered. Let's make a tower. Let's build a city with a tower with its top in the heavens, make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed across the whole earth. 5 says, Hashem descended to look at the city and tower which the sons of man built. Really? I mean, Hashem is everywhere, right? And he's omnipresent and omniscient and so on and so on. What could the text be communicating by saying that God came down? So look at Rashi in 11:5. He really did not need to do this. I don't have to move around. But Scripture intends to teach the judges that they should not proclaim a defendant guilty before they have seen the case and thoroughly understand the matter in question. This is to be found in the Midrash Rabbi Tanchuma. In other words, God is described in human terms in a way to teach us how we are supposed to behave. God investigates down to the details. And we have to conduct an investigation in the same way. It says the same thing by Sodom. I'll go down and I'll check whether the city of Sodom has deteriorated to the point which the report which I have heard indicates, and if so, then there will be destruction. The idea of, we learn, as we said, we learn from God how we're supposed to behave. God relates to us in the way in which, in a manner of an interpersonal relationship. We saw this when it says, we shall make God. He said he took counsel with the angels. From that you learn that a superior should consult with even with an inferior. Should consult with him before he takes action, so the inferior feels that he's being taken into account and he's being associated with the action, not just throw down decrees from on high. This is the kind of behavior that the Torah wants to teach us. Okay, so now, right, and this, okay. Again, so the Hashem descended to look at the city and the tower which the sons of man built. So look at the next Rashi. Sons of man. But whose children could they have been? Perhaps the children of donkeys or camels? Who built the city? Of course it's people. What are you adding when you say the children of man? But it means not the children of man, little m, humans, which would be totally redundant. It's not donkeys and camels. But the children of man, capital M, or Adam, capital A, the children of that person whom I first created. He's associated with what they're doing. That's what the text is saying. And it means the children of Adam Rishon, the first Adam, who proved himself ungrateful when he said, we saw this, the woman who you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree and I ate. And we said that was ingratitude. It wasn't blaming her. That would be ridiculous because it doesn't say the woman gave it to me and I ate. It's the woman whom you gave to be with me. What are all those words, whom you gave to be with me? He's shaking his fingers at the heavens and saying, you put her here. It's your fault. She misled me and you put her here. Why are you blaming me? And Rashi, in the name of Chazal, qualifies this as ingratitude. God gave him relationship with Chava as a precious element to achieve his completion, his perfection. And together could achieve a higher perfection than either one could achieve individually. And he's shaking his finger at the heavens and blaming God. These people are the same way. These people also were ungrateful, rebelling against the one who had showered kindness upon them and rescued them from the flood. These are all descendants of Noah. God miraculously saved their ancestors so that they came into existence, and they're just completely unconscious of any gratitude to God for what He has done. Now, I want to mention something here which I only came across recently, and it was really enlightening and a little bit shocking to me. There's a whole long discussion in the old tradition of what they did wrong. What exactly was wrong with settling in a city and building a tower and so on, up to the heavens, going to fight with God, whatever it is. The Midrashim are various, and they deserve study, and they need study, and they're not easy to assimilate. The Or Chaim, who was a mystic, great scholar, and uses mystic material all the time, says something that's right on the surface. Right on the surface. From a verse that you know. We read it a while ago. Take a look on page 9. Verse 28. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Fill the earth on record. And what are they saying? We're staying in this valley. We're not moving from here. We have a tower. Surround the tower and live right here. It's a direct contradiction to what God told them to do. Fill the earth? No, we're not filling the earth. Sorry, we're staying here. So God said, no, you're not. It said that the text says here that He confused their language and He scattered them. Because I told you to fill it. You didn't fill it on your own, so I'll scatter you. It's going to be filled. I want it filled. That's the simplest, most direct, scripturally supported explanations to what they did wrong. This is not to say the Midrashim aren't true. I told you that Midrash is another dimension. All of it is true. But if you're looking for a simple, direct, scripturally described failure, that's it. Yeah.
Was the purpose of the tower for them to occupy it?
Well, it says, that's not what they say. What they say is, one second. You see at 49, that's where we were. They say, verse 4, they said, come, let us build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed across the whole earth. The stated goal is we want to remain together. We don't want to be dispersed. That's what they say.
So even if they're not occupying the tower, they're surrounding the tower.
That's right. Like the Twin Towers in America, and now the Freedom Tower. So I think that's I saw that in the Orach Chaim, especially since the Orach Chaim is philosophical and Kabbalistic, and here he comes with something that's directly in the Psukim, right in Pshat, and they don't have to go far afield to understand. I was quite shocked by that. I think it's a very good explanation. It's not up to me to say I think that Orach Chaim's explanation, but if it's my desire to have a Pshat, and it provides it. Okay.